What if, tonight, you looked up at the sky, and instead of the small glowing moon, you saw a giant sphere as large as the sun hanging above Earth? A second star in our sky. Silent. Massive. Impossible. But here's the terrifying question. Would Earth survive even a single day? The mystery. Imagine this. You step outside at night. The air is quiet. The stars are shining. But something feels wrong. You look up. And suddenly your heart stops. The moon is no longer small. It fills half the sky. A massive glowing world. As big as the sun itself. The oceans begin to shift. The ground beneath your feet trembles. Because what most people don't realize is this. The moon is already powerful enough to control every ocean on Earth. Now imagine it becoming 1.4 million kilometers wide, the same size as the sun. But here's the scary part. Size alone isn't the biggest problem. Gravity is. Main story, what happens first? The moment a moon the size of the sun appears near Earth, gravity would go completely insane. Right now the moon is about 3,474 kilometers wide. But the sun is over 400 times bigger. If the moon suddenly had the size of the sun, its gravitational pull would be unimaginable. And the first victims would be Earth's oceans. Within minutes, tides would rise thousands of meters high. Not waves. Walls of water. Entire continents would flood. Cities would vanish. But that's only the beginning. Because gravity wouldn't just move water. It would begin to stretch the entire planet. Earth itself would start deforming. The crust would crack. Volcanoes would erupt everywhere. Earthquakes would shake the entire planet at once. Imagine standing on a planet that is literally being pulled apart. But then something even worse happens. The orbit collapse. The real danger comes from orbital mechanics. Right now, the moon stays safely 384,000 kilometers away from Earth. But a sun-sized moon would weigh billions of times more. Earth would no longer be the dominant body. Instead, Earth would become the smaller object being pulled in. The two worlds would begin spiraling toward each other. Slowly at first. But then faster. And faster. Until the sky becomes nothing but a massive glowing moon, filling the entire horizon. Imagine this moment. The moon growing larger every hour. The sky turning bright like daytime. Gravity stretching Earth like rubber. But here's where things get even stranger. Mind-blowing fact. Did you know something incredible? The sun and the moon appear almost the same size in our sky. That's why solar eclipses are possible. But this is just a coincidence of distance. If the moon were truly the size of the sun, it would completely dominate Earth's gravity. In fact, Earth might not even orbit the sun anymore. Instead, the Earth and moon would form something called a binary system. Two massive worlds spinning around each other. But Earth would be the weaker one. And that leads to a terrifying possibility. The terrifying twist. Scientists believe something called tidal disruption would happen. This means gravity becomes so strong. It literally tears planets apart. If Earth got too close to this giant moon, our planet could stretch like liquid. Mountains collapsing. Oceans boiling from friction. The crust ripping open. Eventually, Earth might break into pieces. Fragments of continents. Clouds of molten rock. All orbiting the massive moon. Turning our planet into a ring of debris. Just like Saturn's rings. Except those rings would once have been our world. But here's the biggest mystery. The unknown theory. Some scientists believe early in the solar system, something similar almost happened. Billions of years ago, a planet the size of Mars crashed into Earth. The impact was so powerful, it blasted debris into space. And from that debris, the Moon was born. But what if the collision had been slightly different? What if the Moon had formed much larger? What if Earth had ended up orbiting a giant moon instead of the Sun? Our sky would look completely different. Night might never truly exist. And life on Earth might never have formed. Because stable conditions would be impossible. Final realization. But here's the most mind-blowing part of all. The reason life exists on Earth today is partly because our moon is the perfect size. Not too big. Not too small. Its gravity stabilizes Earth's tilt, controls the oceans, and keeps our planet's climate relatively stable. Without it, life might never have evolved. So the next time you look at the moon, remember this. That quiet glowing sphere in the sky is not just beautiful, it's perfectly balanced. Because if it were even slightly larger, Earth's story might have ended billions of years ago. Powerful ending. The universe is full of chaos, collisions, explosions, worlds being destroyed. And yet somehow, our planet sits in a fragile balance. Between gravity and distance. Between light and darkness. Between survival and total destruction. So tonight, when you look up at the moon, ask yourself one question. What if it had been just a little bigger? And what other cosmic accidents made life on Earth possible? Because in the universe, existence itself might be the greatest miracle of all the moment everything changes. Imagine this. It's a normal night on Earth. People are sleeping. Cities are glowing with lights. The ocean tides are slowly rising, just like they always do. Then suddenly, something impossible appears in the sky. The moon begins to grow. Slowly at first. Almost unnoticeable. But hour by hour, it becomes larger and larger, until it fills the sky like a second sun. But here's the terrifying truth. This isn't just a visual change. This is a cosmic disaster beginning in real time. Because the moon's size isn't the only thing that would change. Its mass would also increase beyond imagination. And gravity would become unstoppable. The night the oceans rose, the first signs would appear in the oceans. At first, tides would rise a little higher than normal. Then higher. Then suddenly, coastal cities around the world would begin flooding. But this wouldn't be normal flooding. The oceans would rise thousands of meters. Gigantic water bulges would form on the side of Earth facing the giant moon. And another on the opposite side. Imagine entire oceans lifting into space like massive hills of water. Ships would be thrown inland. Islands would disappear completely. And coastlines would vanish within hours. But the oceans are only the beginning. Because the moon doesn't just control water. It also pulls on the solid Earth itself. Earth begins to break. Right now, the moon already causes something called solid Earth tides. The ground beneath your feet actually rises and falls by a few centimeters every day. Most people never notice. But if the moon were the size of the sun, those tiny movements would turn into something terrifying. The entire planet would begin stretching. Imagine the ground rising hundreds of meters. Then collapsing again. Over. And over. And over. Earthquakes would happen everywhere at once. Not small tremors, but planet-wide ruptures. The crust would crack open. Volcanoes would erupt across continents. Lava rivers would flow across the land. The sky would darken with ash. And humanity would realize something horrifying. The planet itself is becoming unstable. But then something even worse begins. The sky turns into day. As the moon grows larger in the sky, night slowly disappears. A sun-sized moon would reflect enormous amounts of sunlight. Even in darkness, the sky would glow like twilight. Animals would become confused. Plants would stop following normal cycles. Entire ecosystems would collapse. But here's the strange part. From Earth, the giant moon would look absolutely terrifying. Craters the size of continents would become visible. Mountains hundreds of kilometers wide. It would feel less like looking at the moon, and more like staring at a new planet hovering above us. But gravity never stops working. And eventually, Earth would begin moving closer. The final orbit. Here's something incredible about space. Objects with strong gravity don't stay still. They pull each other together. And a moon the size of the sun would have an enormous gravitational force. Earth would begin drifting toward it. At first slowly. Maybe a few kilometers each hour. But gravity increases with distance. So the closer Earth gets, the faster the fall becomes. Imagine the sky slowly filling with the giant moon. Night after night, it grows larger. The horizon disappears. The entire sky becomes one enormous world. And then comes the moment scientists fear the most. The Roche limit. There's a dangerous distance in space called the Roche limit. If a planet gets too close to a massive object, gravity becomes so strong that it literally tears the planet apart. Not explosions. Not impacts. Just pure gravitational force. If Earth crossed that invisible boundary, our planet would begin breaking apart. First the oceans would stretch into long streams. Then the continents would crack. Mountains collapsing. Cities sliding into the sea. Earth would slowly transform into a spiral of rock and water orbiting the giant moon. Within hours, our entire planet could become nothing more than cosmic debris. A shattered ring of fragments, floating forever in space. The strange possibility. But here's a strange thought. If the moon had always been the size of the sun, Earth might never have existed the way we know it. Planets form through delicate balances of gravity. Too much gravity. And planets collide too often. Too little. And they never form at all. The reason Earth formed peacefully around the sun is because the moon is small enough to stay in its place, but big enough to stabilize our planet. It's an incredibly rare balance. And scientists believe this balance might be one reason life exists here at all. A cosmic coincidence. Here's one of the most fascinating coincidences in astronomy. The moon is exactly the right size and distance to create perfect solar eclipses. From Earth, the moon perfectly covers the sun. Not too big. Not too small. Just perfect. Some scientists call this a cosmic coincidence. Others believe it's simply luck. But if the moon were even 10 times larger, eclipses would never happen. And if it were the size of the sun, Earth wouldn't even survive. The final thought. So the next time you step outside at night and see the moon hanging quietly in the sky, remember something incredible. That peaceful glowing world is part of a delicate cosmic balance. A balance that protects our oceans, stabilizes our climate, and may have helped life evolve. Because if the moon had been just a little bigger, or just a little closer, Earth might have become nothing more than a ring of dust orbiting space. And no one would ever be here to ask the question. What if, a sky humans were never meant to? Imagine this. You step outside at night. But the sky doesn't look normal anymore. There are no stars. No darkness. Only a gigantic gray world hanging above Earth. The moon. Now the size of the sun. It stretches across the entire sky like a colossal wall in space. You can see enormous craters. Mountains taller than anything on Earth. Shadows stretching thousands of kilometers. And for the first time in human history, people would truly understand something terrifying. Earth is not the center of the universe. It's just a small world, trapped next to something unimaginably massive. But then something impossible begins to happen. The atmosphere starts to move. Gravity from the giant moon wouldn't just pull oceans. It would begin pulling Earth's atmosphere. Winds across the planet would grow violent. Storms stronger than any hurricane ever recorded. Jet streams twisting across continents. The sky turning into a battlefield of clouds and lightning. Imagine standing outside as winds reach 500 kilometers per hour. Cities would collapse. Forests would flatten. Airplanes could never fly again. But here's the terrifying part. This chaos would never stop. Because the moon's gravity would be constantly pulling the planet. And the closer Earth moves, the worse everything becomes. The day the sky cracked. As Earth gets closer to the massive moon, gravity begins doing something even stranger. It starts pulling different parts of Earth at different speeds. The side facing the moon would feel stronger gravity. The opposite side would feel weaker gravity. This difference is called tidal force. And it's powerful enough to destroy planets. Imagine the Earth slowly stretching like a rubber ball. The oceans bulging outward. The crust cracking open. Huge fractures appearing across continents. Some scientists believe mountains could literally collapse under their own weight. And then something even more dramatic could happen. Earth might become tidally locked. A world with one permanent sky. Tidal locking means one side of Earth would always face the giant moon. Just like the real moon always shows the same face to Earth. Imagine living on that side of the planet. The moon would never move. It would stay frozen in the sky forever. A massive wall covering half the heavens. Night and day would feel completely different. One side of Earth would always experience intense gravitational stress, while the opposite side might feel strangely calm. But that balance wouldn't last long, because gravity would keep pulling Earth closer and closer, until the final catastrophe begins. The collision. If Earth moved close enough, the giant moon could eventually collide with our planet. And the energy released from that collision would be beyond comprehension. To understand how powerful it would be, consider this. The asteroid that wiped out the dinosaurs was about 10 kilometers wide. But a sun-sized moon would be 1.4 million kilometers wide. The impact would release more energy than every nuclear weapon on Earth combined, billions of times over. The entire planet would vaporize. Oceans would turn into steam instantly. Mountains would melt into glowing rivers of magma. Earth wouldn't just be destroyed. It would be completely erased. Only clouds of debris would remain, spreading across the solar system. But here's the strange part. The universe does this all the time. Planetary destruction might sound like science fiction. But in space, it's actually common. Astronomers have discovered entire solar systems where planets have collided. Some stars are surrounded by massive clouds of dust, believed to be the remains of destroyed worlds. In fact, billions of years ago, our own solar system was a violent place. Planets crashing into each other. Moons forming from debris. Worlds being torn apart by gravity. Earth survived that chaos. Barely. And the moon we see today is actually a remnant of one of those ancient collisions. But imagine if things had turned out slightly differently. Imagine if that collision had created a much larger moon. Life on Earth might never have existed. The cosmic balance. Scientists often say something fascinating. Earth exists in a perfect balance of cosmic forces. Our distance from the sun. The size of our moon. The strength of gravity. Even the tilt of Earth's axis. If any of these were slightly different, life might not be possible. The moon is just big enough to stabilize Earth's rotation, but small enough to avoid destroying the planet. It's a delicate balance that has lasted 4.5 billion years. And in the vast chaos of the universe, that kind of balance is extremely rare. Final reflection. So tonight, when you look up at the moon, it may seem small, peaceful, silent. But that little glowing sphere has shaped the fate of our planet. It controls the tides, guides migrating animals, and stabilizes the world we live on. But if it had been the size of the sun, Earth might have become nothing more than a shattered ring of rock in space. A forgotten world, floating silently around a giant moon. And no one would ever be here to look up at the sky and wonder, what if? The night humans would never forget. Imagine this. It's the middle of the night. The world is quiet. Cities are asleep. Then suddenly, people start noticing something strange. The moon looks different. Not just brighter, bigger. At first it feels like an illusion, a trick of the atmosphere. But within minutes, social media explodes. People everywhere are looking up and realizing the same terrifying thing. The moon is growing. Slowly, silently, expanding across the sky. Within hours, it becomes impossible to ignore. The moon now fills a huge part of the heavens. And the stars behind it begin to disappear. But here's the frightening truth. What people are seeing is not just a visual change. It's the beginning of a gravitational nightmare. The oceans go mad. The first systems to collapse would be Earth's oceans. Right now, the moon gently pulls the seas. That's why we have tides. But a moon the size of the sun would create tides so massive. They would make today's oceans look calm. Imagine water rising kilometers into the air. Gigantic walls of ocean forming on both sides of the planet. Entire coastlines would disappear overnight. Countries like Japan, the Philippines, the United Kingdom, and Indonesia would vanish beneath the waves. But it wouldn't stop there. Those massive water bulges would begin moving around the planet, flooding everything in their path. Human civilization, built mostly near oceans, would collapse within days. But the oceans are only the first victims. Because something even more dramatic is happening beneath our feet. The planet starts breathing. Earth would begin doing something strange. It would start expanding and contracting under the moon's gravity. Imagine the entire planet slowly rising, then falling again. Like a giant heartbeat. The crust would stretch, then compress. Stretch, then compress again. Each cycle releasing unimaginable stress inside the planet. The result? Earthquakes everywhere. Every continent shaking at once. Volcanoes erupting across the globe. Ash clouds filling the sky. The sun turning red through the haze. But then something even more unbelievable begins. The sky becomes a wall. As the moon continues growing in the sky, it starts blocking huge portions of space. Eventually, the moon would cover most of the stars. The night sky we've known for thousands of years would disappear. Instead, the sky would become a massive gray landscape. A world hovering above our heads. You could see valleys the size of countries. Impact craters wider than oceans. Mountains taller than Everest. The moon would no longer feel distant. It would feel close enough to touch. But this visual spectacle hides something terrifying. Because the closer the moon appears, the stronger its gravity becomes. And eventually, Earth would cross a dangerous boundary. The point of no return. Scientists call it the Roche limit. It's an invisible line in space. If a smaller object crosses this boundary near a massive body, gravity will rip it apart. Not explode. Not shatter instantly. But slowly. Piece by piece. If Earth crossed that line near a sun-sized moon, the oceans would stretch into long streams. The atmosphere would start escaping into space. Mountains would collapse. The crust would split into enormous fragments. Earth would begin transforming into something incredible. A planetary ring system. Just like the rings around Saturn. Except these rings would contain pieces of oceans, continents, and everything that once lived here. But the universe has one more surprise. The strange possibility of survival. Believe it or not, some fragments of Earth might survive. Large chunks of rock could remain in orbit around the giant moon. These fragments might collide and merge again. Over millions of years. A new world could form from the debris. A second-generation planet. Born from the remains of Earth. And if that new world had the right conditions, life might begin again. Completely new. Completely different. A new story of evolution. But it would never know what came before. The cosmic lesson. The universe is filled with destruction. Stars explode. Galaxies collide. Planets are torn apart by gravity. Yet somehow, our small blue world has survived billions of years. Protected by delicate balances of physics. And one of those balances is the moon itself. Not too big. Not too small. Just enough gravity to stabilize Earth. But not enough to destroy it. It's a cosmic coincidence that allowed oceans to form. Climate to stabilize. And life to evolve. Final moment. So the next time you look up at the moon, remember this. That quiet glowing circle in the sky could have been something very different. It could have been a massive world dominating our planet. A force strong enough to tear Earth apart. But instead, it sits peacefully in the darkness. Guiding the tides. Lighting the night. And reminding us of something incredible. In a universe full of chaos, our planet exists in a fragile balance. And sometimes, the difference between life and destruction is simply the size of a moon. The first day of chaos. Imagine this. The moon has already grown to the size of the sun. It fills the sky like a giant wall in space. At first, humanity watches in shock. Scientists rush to observatories. Telescopes across the planet turn toward the sky. And what they discover next changes everything. The climate collapse. Earth's climate is extremely sensitive. Just a few degrees of change can reshape the entire planet. If Earth moved closer to the sun, oceans would start evaporating. Clouds would thicken. The atmosphere could trap heat like a giant greenhouse. Temperatures rising higher and higher. Eventually turning Earth into something like Venus. A scorching world where the surface melts. But if Earth moved farther from the sun, the opposite could happen. Temperatures would drop rapidly. Oceans freezing solid. Ice spreading across continents. The planet becoming a frozen snowball world. Life struggling to survive either extreme. The sky would never look the same. But even if Earth somehow survived, the sky would become something no human civilization has ever seen. Imagine stepping outside at night and seeing a moon so massive that it covers almost the entire horizon. Its craters larger than countries. Its mountains visible with the naked eye. The night sky would glow with reflected sunlight. Darkness might never truly exist again. The stars that guided ancient explorers would disappear behind the giant moon. Humanity would grow up under a completely different sky. A sky dominated by a colossal world. The gravity effect on humans. But here's a strange question. Would humans feel the difference in gravity? Surprisingly, not directly. Earth's surface gravity mostly depends on Earth's own mass. So people wouldn't suddenly become heavier. But the environment around them would change dramatically. Ocean tides reshaping coastlines. Earthquakes constantly shaking the ground. Weather patterns becoming unpredictable. Living on Earth would feel like living on a planet under constant stress. Civilization might struggle to survive. But life itself is incredibly adaptable. The possibility of a new world. Over millions of years, Earth and the giant moon could settle into a stable orbit. Two massive worlds dancing around each other in space. From Earth, the moon would look like a permanent neighboring planet. Some scientists imagine that in such systems, debris and dust can eventually form new moons. Small satellites orbiting the larger bodies. Imagine standing on Earth in the distant future, looking up at the sky, and seeing not just one moon, but several smaller moons orbiting the giant one. A sky more spectacular than anything humanity has ever seen. The moon is not just bigger. It is pulling Earth closer. Slowly. Silently. But unstoppable. Because gravity always wins. The planet's rotation begins to slow. Here's something most people don't know. The moon already affects Earth's rotation. Every year, our planet spins just a little slower because of lunar gravity. But with a moon the size of the sun, that slowing would happen thousands of times faster. Days would start getting longer. 24 hours would become 30, then 40, then 60. Eventually, Earth might take weeks to rotate once. Imagine a world where daylight lasts for days. And night lasts for days too. Temperatures would swing wildly. Daytime heat scorching the surface. Nighttime cold freezing everything solid. But that's not even the biggest problem. Because the solar system itself would begin to change. The sun would lose control. Right now, the sun is the dominant force in our solar system. Its gravity holds the planets in orbit. But if the moon suddenly had the size and mass of the sun, everything would change. Earth would no longer clearly belong to the sun. Instead, Earth and the giant moon would form their own gravitational system. A binary planet system. Together, they would begin moving differently around the sun. Their orbit could become unstable. Earth might drift slightly closer to the sun, or slightly farther away. And even a small change in distance from the sun could completely transform our planet. The universe loves extremes. Astronomers have discovered something fascinating. Across the universe, there are planetary systems far stranger than ours. Planets orbiting two stars at once. Gas giants larger than Jupiter orbiting extremely close to their stars. Rogue planets drifting alone through interstellar space. Compared to these worlds, our solar system is surprisingly calm. But scenarios like a sun-sized moon show just how fragile planetary systems can be. One change, one cosmic accident, can transform everything. The final cosmic thought. The universe doesn't promise stability. Stars explode. Planets collide. Entire solar systems are destroyed. And yet somehow, our small blue world has survived billions of years. Protected by the delicate balance of gravity. The moon we see tonight is part of that balance. Not too big. Not too small. Just enough to shape our oceans and stabilize our planet. Because if the moon had been the size of the sun, Earth might never have become the home of life. And the story of humanity would never have begun. Final line. So tonight, when you look up at the moon glowing softly in the darkness, remember something incredible. That small white circle in the sky is one of the reasons we are here at all. And in a universe filled with chaos, sometimes the smallest differences make the biggest miracles. Crescent moon sparkles.